Hey everybody, welcome to Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics. And this is an exciting show tonight because we have Dr. Lawrence Brock on. So we're going to be interviewing him here at Afterlife Topics University. It's the classes that we do. Where you can also join in and do these, participate in these interviews live if you want, or else you might be watching it later down the road on YouTube. In which case, this is where we talk about complex, metaphysical, supernatural, paranormal types of subjects. We're usually just myself blabbing away at the camera, but oftentimes or sometimes we get guests as well. So we have a cool guest to talk about his near-death experience, his healing techniques. So I'm going to say hi to Dr. Lawrence Brock. Hi, Lawrence.
Hi.
How are you doing tonight? I don't want to say tonight because it's nighttime here. I'm kind of I'm in a makeshift like room closet right now. It's late at night because I'm in Europe. So I apologize. You guys might be hearing like my audio might be a little bit more echoey than it usually is, and the lighting kind of sucks. But hey, that's what you get here because I live out of a backpack. I pull this stuff off as well as I can, given minimal amounts of resources sometimes. But anyway, but it's nice. Looks bright and sunny where you are. Where are you, by the way?
In New Jersey.
Ah, New Jersey.
Shore,
wow.
at the Jersey Shore, they say. So.
Oh, but you don't really have the accent, do you?
Well, I've lived here about 16 years. So, but
okay. So
in Westchester, New York is where I grew up.
Right on. So actually, I'm quite rude. I should have given you the proper introduction. So you have a doctorate in spiritual science and you hold a postgraduate degree in ministerial counseling. You're a regular visiting professor at the University of Bridgeport, a near-death experience survivor, counselor, healer, and clairvoyant. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So I guess we can kind of jump into this. First of all, thanks for coming on this little show. And I'm hoping maybe you can walk us through a little bit about kind of where you were at before your near-death experience and what the near-death experience was. And then we can talk a little bit about the after effects of that, I suppose, the healing abilities.
Yeah, I'm always trying to, so it was many years ago. And people did not talk about near-death experiences as far as I knew at the time. But afterward, I became very interested in what happens after we die. It was a real reminder for me. I always had a feeling there was something more than the physical life. And having the near-death experience allowed me to experience it firsthand. And I say this often because it really sent me on a journey where everything in my life is about like what's going on spiritually in my work, in my relationships. Every experience has become about spirituality, learning to be more spiritual, learning about healing. Before that, I was kind of very scientific and mathematical. I was always very smart in those things in school. So if I were to hear about this when I was before my near-death experience, even though I knew there was something more, I would think it was a little cuckoo.
God, yeah, that's common. A lot of people, they change their paradigm after they have the NDE. But
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about the near-death experience, about some of the details or what you experienced or like
yes,
what happened?
I guess to start with, I'm a very kinesthetic feeling person. And so I had the experience of seeing myself, my body. It was leaning against a tree. I was in a really bad car accident, and I was in the white light up above here. I didn't feel like I was really going into the light as being in the white light. And I just felt this warm, incredibly loving. It just seemed like I sort of understood the universe, and it was more of a very warm, loving feeling. Then a voice said to me, you need to go back. Your father wants you to stay. And I knew then that it was my spiritual father, not my physical father. And I often describe it like everything was just really okay, but that's kind of small compared to what it was. Just imagine if everything was okay. And that's what it felt like. And in that spirit, I went back into my body and woke up 3 days later in the hospital.
Wow, 3 days. So you were in a coma for 3 days then?
Yes.
Wow. And what was the prognosis afterwards? Did they say like you wouldn't walk again, or you'd have brain damage, or what?
I just remember the neurologist smiling at me and saying, "You're so lucky." It was a long time ago, so patients' rights were different then than they are now. And I went back not too long ago and asked my dad about it, and he said the doctor didn't tell him anything, which in those days was pretty normal. I just remember the look on the neurologist's face, smiling, and one of the nurses saying it's like a close call. That I didn't get that much information about the medical part of it actually.
So, did you get an idea of how long the near-death experience lasted? If you can, like, if you have like any kind of like recognition of that kind of thing, was it just kind of like a memory after you came back? Did you ever have a feeling of like leaving your body or seeing another world, or was it very much more like a direct communication by something?
No, it was a very real experience. It seemed like a memory of something that happened very clearly, definitely happened. It's not like oh, I sort of remember that, when I was 10 years old type of thing. It was very real. Um, but I didn't know what it was, and I really didn't know what to make of it. And as I said, part of it was I was so curious, like I needed to find out what happened.
Okay, and so essentially, I mean, you had the encounter with the light, but it wasn't like you were going toward the light. It was more like the light was just all around you, and then there was a higher presence communicating to you, and then that basically
Yes.
brought you back.
So
Okay.
I heard a voice. It felt to me like it was like the white light behind me. So afterward, when I started meeting people, when I heard certain words, it like, oh, that was it. And but it felt like there was a healing master there telling me that I had to go back, and God was over there. And even though the white light was the same in the front and the back, it felt like God was behind me, and that white light back there was God.
Got it. Okay. So basically, though, the near-death experience is one part of the story. What
Yes.
came to be is that you took up work as a healer. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you
Yeah.
on here to talk to you, because I've had a lot of interest in healing, and I've had my own kind of different techniques that have worked really well on myself with
Yeah.
with different small conditions that I've had, that I've been able to see go away by practicing certain techniques. And so I think a lot of people out there, I mean, they may be wondering if there are ways based through spiritual principles or energetic principles to be able to assist with their illnesses, whether it's something very serious like cancer or something less serious but is interrupting the quality of life. So you perform healing on other people. I know there's other also ways to perform healing on oneself. So can you walk us through how you became a spiritual healing expert, and then maybe go into some details about the types of healing that you do?
Yes. It took a long time. Um, Again, after my near-death experience, I was like, I was questioning: was it just a dream? Did it really happen? Two things happened though. That one, it's a specific. I started to notice when I touched people, my hands became warm. That was one thing. So I started to explore that. I had one specific situation where a friend of mine like strained their calf, and I put my hand on it. He said, "Let me massage it a little," and it got better like that. And it was really cool. It was, again, I didn't, now I have all the words and I've studied, and it seems more commonplace today. In those days, it was kind of, you know, strange, let's say. The other thing is I prayed for a friend's father, and when I did, I felt something happen. And he was on his deathbed at that time. And my friend, next time I saw him, he goes, "I think you did something when you prayed." I said, "I think so too." And his father was pretty old, but he has since passed away. But he was basically the doctors were saying he was going to die pretty much any moment, to where he lived a few months longer. So that got me curious.
And so in this case, it was kind of, you were going almost just from the mental, like prayer and touch and things like this. Is When did you become like a professional? I know you say that I see in your bio that you have different certifications in
Yeah.
certain types of healing. And maybe you could just tell us a little bit about what was your path to get from the
Yes.
beginning to becoming a professional healer?
So before doing this, I was in a family electrical contracting business, uh, basically in the administration. So I'd go check on the job sometimes. And on the way to checking on one of the jobs, a woman that I used to think of as an old woman, who's probably younger than I am now, basically ran through a red light, and I swerved off the road. She didn't hit me, but I went off the road, and there was a big stone there that hit the bottom of the van. I didn't feel like I got hurt right then, but the next morning I woke up, my shoulder and back were so tight that it was hurting. And I knew it was a combination of the accident, plus I'd been working too much, just a lot of stress. And I went to Vermont to visit a friend just to have a little R&R, and he suggested I try a polarity treatment, polarity therapy. This woman, first, I always tell the story because I got off the table. I was going to complain because it seemed so short because she said it would be an hour. I looked at the clock before I said something. I was on there for 3 hours. But I went through, I had childhood memories, like a lot of energy opened up in me, and I felt a lot of tingling. And I just felt, even though I was around 25 then, I felt like, like an old man. And after that, I felt young again. And so I followed up. She suggested I see someone near where I live, and I started getting polarity treatments there. And one day the woman said, I'm teaching a class. I think that you would like it. So I started a class. And again, I noticed my hands getting warm when I placed them on people. And I started, I was very aware of what was going on energetically. And it was sort of like giving permission to my intuition opened it up more.
I see. So can you tell us a little bit about what polarity therapy exactly is?
Yes, it's a very gentle form of body work. It's kind of similar to what people think of as acupressure, but more gentle, where you're really holding, the polarity indicates you're really holding usually things on each side of the body and you wait for them to balance out. It's very gentle. It's based on Ayurvedic medicine as opposed to Chinese or Japanese, Ayurvedic medicine from India.
Okay, is there any kind of like a metaphysical concept related to how it might work, whether it's, I don't, in terms of what the energy system is that's creating the healing, or if it's coming from an outside force, if it's a spiritual entity helping heal somebody, or is it the person? Is it the healer themselves? Do you have any info?
In polarity, you're basically balancing, I think in any practicing of any healing, it depends on the person doing it, but in the polarity therapy theories, it's you're balancing the energy in the person, and you're using your energy to stimulate the points.
Got it. And let's say maybe somebody is hearing this and they want to experiment using this as a healing method on themselves. Like, let's say somebody just burnt their arm on the stove, and they're like, well, maybe I can use this opportunity to experiment with this thing I heard on YouTube. Is there a way, is there like a technique or something that you can do by yourself in that situation as a beginner to try to experiment?
Polarity is a very complex system, actually. There's no actual bodywork part of it, but there are like exercises that are sort of similar to Tai Chi that go with it. But polarities, I'm not the only one. I'm pretty sure like something happened in the polarity community where there were people arguing about who was the true polarity master some years ago, and I sort of stepped away from it because it seemed more political than focusing on healing. But if anyone looks online to, you're talking about burning, I would suggest there's homeopathic things for that would probably be a better way to go than polarity.
So is polarity still your focus, or are you using a different healing method?
I mostly work on the phone, so that's not, but when I see people in person, I do think, So the body work I do in person now is a little bit of polarity and my misunderstanding of some Traeger work. And so it's very gentle energy balancing work that's similar to polarity, but I've sort of made up my own type of way of doing that.
Oh, okay. So you have your and it can be done on the phone. So
Yes,
how does healing work via phone? Because I kept thinking it's related to like the physical touch and the energy
yes.
in the exact location. How does it work on the phone?
That's a good, well, so it's not really working on the phone. It's really working spiritually. There's just a lot of different energies in the spirit. Some of them would be like angels or healing masters or sometimes energy. Sometimes the energy comes in, there's color to it, which is a certain frequency and vibration. And there's, I look to see, and plus, I mean, there's so many things to check, but it happens very quickly now because my intuition just takes me there. So then, part of it is being very open to allow the right thing to happen there. Sometimes that part's a little frustrating because some people who do what I do, they work with a specific healing master. As far as commercializing it, it's kind of might be a little better, but so there's the archangels, there's angels, there's, I mean, Jesus Christ, there's Abraham, there's, you know, Saint Germain these are famous, spiritual beings that come in and they'll help in the healing. And people say, how do you know it's real? I don't know if it's real because it's just what I see. But if someone gets better, that's what this is all about, right? And people feel it. So that's good.
I appreciate your honesty in the sense that, if someone asks if it's real, you're kind of like, well, we can't say if that's really Archangel Michael. And that's kind of what I would be thinking as well. And it also makes me think about what Jesus said, which was that everything I can do, you can also do, in the sense that
Yes.
you wouldn't philosophically then need to actually bring Jesus in to be able to do the work for you. If the whole principle is that we can do some of these things ourselves.
Yes.
So if you're doing this over the phone for somebody, and it sounds like what you're doing is you're directing your energy and your intention on somebody. Is that kind of a way to simplify what you're saying?
Well, the part of on them is really important not to do. So it is sort of asking for something and really trying to keep my opinion and what I think, even about what healing is, not involved, because the spirit will honor us so much. Even if someone breaks their leg, you would assume, well, you want it to heal and get better, but that part is, you don't necessarily know that. So I've had experiences learning about that where I've helped people heal in a way that I felt like I was really pushing it, and it wasn't really in line with their destiny or their karma or, whatever you would call that kind of thing. And it just didn't go right. So it is really almost saying, dear God, help me. I really have no idea. And then I can read what's going on pretty well. And I've learned it's almost like there's this energy up to the right and people are disconnected from it. And I've learned how to talk to people so they connect into that energy, and then it comes in. And a lot of times people say, oh, I see a color, or I feel the tingling, or, sometimes like that, their symptoms go away. It's kind of cool.
So he's touched on something very interesting, which is that if someone's, quote, karma basically means that somebody was meant to have some accident, meant to have some kind of injury for some kind of weird, complicated metaphysical reason, then the spiritual types of healing might not do anything because it was something that's already supposed to be there. So you can't get, the other side is not going to fix that. Do you have any examples? Like, can that just be anything, or is there like one situation where that's more common?
It's so one of my clients years ago, I don't know if I came up with it. Talking to one of my clients, it's sort of like it's a file, and there's like 100 pieces of paper in there, and we only need like 2 of them. So I can get rid of the other 98, and it certainly makes life much better. Sometimes getting rid of those 98 get the symptoms to go away. some of that has to do with what level it's on. If it's really on the physical level, the body needs time to heal. Sometimes there's habitual part, and that would be more on the mental level that needs to have time to clear. Um, so it's tricky to, when you're asking questions. A friend of mine once said, if you can put your finger on it, it's not it. So we're trying to talk about something that's indescribable, but people get the spirit of it. So when I'm talking, people get a feeling like, oh yeah, that sounds like the right thing for me.
And so is there the mental component in the sense that somebody's thoughts might be creating a disease and then you can heal it, but then the disease will come back if their thoughts are still in the wrong place? Because I hear a lot of people in the healing, I guess, community talk about this. Does that make any sense?
It does. I mean, when something clears when I'm working, it's cleared. So, but sometimes there's other levels. I've never had that happen with a physical experience, like someone who had a physical ailment that it went away and came back. But there are times, like patterns in people's lives when, more emotionally that might happen. But the mental part is not really what we're thinking. It's more in the unconscious and subconscious. So otherwise, it'd be nice. You could just think, oh, I'm better, and you'd be better right away. You could talk about like it's more in our beliefs. And yeah, I mean, there's so many different, each person's very individual, and it's sort of like a combination lock where there's like 1,000 numbers in it, and you have to get all the numbers lined up. Sometimes, 999 of them are lined up, and you just do one more. Sometimes, there's less than 1,000. That is probably more like thinking about it 100 numbers in that lock, because 1,000 seems overwhelming.
Interesting. Wow. So with my experiences doing healing techniques on myself, one experiment was I had this big keloid scar that was attached to a surgical scar when I had surgery on my leg. So this thing is itchy every single day for the last 5 years. It never went away.
Yeah.
So I was trying something I was hearing about basically through Greg Braden. Do you know Greg Braden?
No.
He was investigating a no medicine Chinese hospital with actual people in like medical smalls, but they would only implement energy healing on the patients. And so the technique that the doctors were using was they were doing a chant, and the chant basically meant, translated to English, like "make it so," like "it is now, make it so." And what they were doing was, it was like intense visualization of whatever the illness was,
right?
Basically entering into a universe where that illness doesn't exist.
Well, that's cool.
And so it was this intensive visualization process.
Yeah.
So I figure, well, what I can do is completely 100% imagine that the condition is gone, and then focus on that with like the intensity that the Chinese doctors would do it on the documentary I watched. And so I did that for like an hour on my keloid to see what would happen.
Yeah.
And didn't really expect much, but about 12 hours later, it shriveled up and disappeared.
Wow, that's cool.
And that was after 5 years of that thing just sitting on my leg.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, oh, bye keloid. Now I just have like a little patch, a little bit of a little scar tissue where it used to be. But that thing just, shriveled up and disappeared. And so I've always wondered about what the mechanism is behind that, and if that's something that's similar, because in that case, I mean, what's happening is it's almost like it's the power of intention that's just altering the physiology of your body. And I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, what I do is a little different than that. Like I said, it's sort of talking to people and getting something in them to open up to this energies and spiritual beings that come in. And it's a little different. So, and, when you're doing that on yourself, that seems legitimate. It's just, in what I do, it's very important not to put my stuff on the other people. And I'm very cautious of doing that, because sometimes people come to me and I can see from other practitioners, there's it's almost like a spiritual cast on them that might have helped them when they were getting better, but then the cast doesn't come off, and then it starts to restrict them.
Okay, interesting. So in what way does it restrict them? Maybe you can elaborate a little bit.
Okay, yes. So there's, so I was talking to someone recently, and they had spoken to a practitioner who was very into Native American healing. And this person was, from talking to that practitioner, was very sure that that was their thing, but they weren't getting better. And I tried to tell them that's just not your thing, and you need to sort of find what your thing is, where the karma allows you to heal. And that person was very locked into that. And then I start to see like different guides and, the spiritual masters that would go along with American, Native American healing. So.
Okay, so in some complicated metaphysical way that's impossible to understand, a Native American methodology of healing might not work for somebody because their energy is not in agreement with Native American energy.
Right.
Maybe, they were General Custer in a past life, and the Native American.
That could be something like that, yeah. So years ago, I went to this concert at the local library here, and it was Hindi people playing, spiritual music, and I really liked it and everything, but I came out of there was all this energy from that religion on. And it was almost like they thought everyone should be their religion, and that's just not for me in this lifetime. So I was like, I had to get all that energy off of me. And it's someone seeing what they think the other person should be. So for me, I mean, I try to be general about it. Like we could say health and happiness is important. And though, the specifics of it, you want to leave up to spirit, how it comes in and shows up.
That's really funny because it's something I've been talking about or thinking about lately is different religions, or that different religions are all correct, but they create almost like their own subgroup, and that subculture, that world that's created, it has its own frequency, it has its own energy, and to many of them, like their religion is the only correct religion.
Right.
And we know that's not true. We also know people who cross over are not all-knowing beings right away. You can be belonging to, for example, the Hindu religion, and then you can believe that only the Hindus have the correct answers.
Right.
That still becomes this force that can get imposed upon people on any layer of existence, because there's all that collective belief that's pushing this one way of being. And probably it's easier to connect with an energy that does align if you have a religion, or if you don't have a religion, something that is a lot less forceful. Like, Buddhists are a little bit more lenient about the belief system, at least modern Buddhists, right? So you can be a Buddhist and you can also be a Christian, for example. So it's not like it's a theology. So, or, maybe in just a general secular way, you could tap into just as some people say, source consciousness, right? It does not attach to any kind of belief.
So there, yes. So like sometimes, I'm working with someone and they do have a certain religion. And then like if a master comes in of a different religion, sometimes I don't even tell them, but sometimes you sort of have to tell them because they're not open to it. And some people get kind of bent out of shape about that. So.
This is a good time then to ask, because so you also said that you're clairvoyant, and I'm kind of thinking along the lines that when you say like a different master comes in,
yes,
that you are clairvoyantly communicating with that entity. So, and also before the show started, you're referencing Suzanne Wilson's interview we did a couple shows back, and she was talking about the mental of subjectively seeing something and then objectively seeing. So you actually see with your own eyes somebody standing with a hat. And so you mentioned, I think, that you've experienced both, and this is kind of how you work. Can you tell us all about your clairvoyance?
Yes, I like the word clairvoyance because it's just being able to see. It means being able to see, and people can relate to that. So my initial thing was more touching and feeling and sort of just knowing that way where things are out of bounds. The hearing and seeing are things that I've worked to develop over the years. When I see, so sometimes I see, and it's funny, I was wondering about this recently because I've seen people that I know that are not alive anymore and they look as solid as a real person. But I wonder if sometimes because these are people that I know that they died, you know, in my mind, I wonder if sometimes I see these beings without even being aware of it because sometimes they look so real. Sometimes it is I see things not in my mind and they look kind of opaque. So those are obviously spirits. And then sometimes it just I see an image in my mind. What I do, as I said, I try to remain very open so any of these kind of things can happen. Sometimes I just know stuff about people. Sometimes, you know, funny little things are kind of good stories because there's no personal information that I wouldn't want to share right now. But, you know, I have a voice and I don't even know what the voice is, but I've learned to trust it. It just starts saying things to me. And not too long ago, I was saying ice cream. And I'm talking to this woman, a client on the phone, nothing about ice cream. And then the voice starts going, ice cream, ice cream, ice cream. And then it just says, just say ice cream. And, you know, I've learned to listen sooner, but this time was like had nothing so far from what we were talking about. And my clients and I said, excuse me, I'm hearing to say ice cream to you. And the woman just sort of in between laughing and crying, she said, oh, I had a big fight with my boyfriend this morning about ice cream. So,
Oh, okay. And did that have a practical purpose, or was it just going to prove to her that this is a real thing happening?
well, she was all emotional about it, so it helped her be a little clearer for the session. But no, I mean, I like the story because it's not related to anything very heavy. And it's, you know, it's not, I wouldn't want to necessarily share personal information about someone, you know, one of my clients.
Would you say that that's mediumship? Or would you call it
I
medium?
think of mediumship as when you're connecting with a past loved one. Again, I like clairvoyant because it just is just generally seeing. Like, again, how we define those words really is up to us. And, that's what I think of as mediumship. I mean, sometimes I'm working with a client and their loved one comes in and I can see that. But to me, mediumship is more like you're channeling someone, but I tend to see it more outside of me. It's not like they come through me.
Got it. Okay. And so given all that, oh yeah, one last thing I forgot to ask you. So, but how long has the clairvoyance been going on? Did that just kick in suddenly, or has that been happening for a while? Like the direct clairvoyance, seeing spirit people walking by, that kind of thing.
Um, the first time I really experienced that I knew of was actually before my near-death experience. I was in my late teens, so it was a few years before my near-death experience, and I was in the movies in New York City, and my grandfather had passed away shortly before that, and I saw him sitting in the front row of the movie theater. And I'm looking at him, and he was a unique-looking person, so it would be literally impossible for it to be someone who looked like him. He was like 6'4", you know, really big, like 300 plus pounds. And he always wore a super nice suit and a cowboy hat and cowboy boots. And back in those days, this was in New York City. I don't know of anyone back then who would wear that type of outfit in New York City. So I saw him, I just walked by and it was like, I didn't even know what to make of it. I mentioned it to my brother and then I let it go. I don't even know it's funny that I just let it go. Like, you know, that's kind of bizarre to see that when you have no idea what it is. So, I've always been very intuitive, and I think that answers your question. And then there's, you know, when I start to work with people, I used to just do hands-on healing, and so I just started to know things. It wasn't so much seeing in that way; it was more of a knowing. And then over the years, the hearing and the seeing have really developed. So.
That's a great story about your grandfather. I mean, some people see the spirit side coming in to prowl around what we call the near earth astral, kind of like, the film Ghost, when you're interacting with our world, but you're still connected to that world, but people cannot see you. But I mean, this is the way to be able to hang around loved ones and interact with or see what's going on without hopefully being too much of a voyeur. But some people are able to just see into that plane so much that they almost take it for granted. I knew a kid back when I was in school, actually later in the university, and he was basically like, very timid to talk about it. But he's like, basically, I see dead people everywhere I go.
Really? Yeah.
Very matter of fact. I go to the Walmart, and then the third lady down in the cereal aisle is actually somebody who's a spooked-looking dead person, like trying to figure out what's going on. So it's interesting that some people, they just see straight into that world, and it definitely plays into like other abilities as well. So so do you have any suggestions or advice for anybody who wants to either get into healing, receive healing, or try some kind of healing on themselves?
Well, I have a number of tools that I use for myself. I think meditation is probably the basic, most important thing. I have, if anyone's interested, I have some YouTube videos about the tools I use to clear myself. I do Tai Chi Cha. It's a specific type of Tai Chi. And the type of meditation that I do brings in, it's peaceful for a little while, but it really brings a lot of energy into the body for healing. And sometimes it's quite intense, actually.
So maybe then meditation for taking up Tai Chi. I imagine Qigong might also work well.
I would think so. I've never done Qigong, but I think it's very similar. The teacher that I studied with more than once said the Tai Chi that I do is not connected to fighting at all. Some Tai Chi, you're doing the movements to train for martial arts thing. Mm-hmm. So he would say it's a Qigong type of Tai Chi. So I think that is true. The other thing is journal writing, and there's other writing techniques, and that is a great way to get your head clear and in the right direction.
Okay, so clear your head, meditation, Tai Chi, maybe Qigong, spiritual exercises, and then basically developing, as they say, your third eye, whatever you want to call it, your connection to the other side, and then using that, implementing that in such a way that you're directing energy on somebody else, maybe through a third-party source, a higher power, an entity that you have connected to. So now you're connecting to that entity, and now through that entity, that power is coming out through your.
So entity is not an entity. Generally, is a negative thing. So these are not entities. And part of what I do, by identifying something, it gives you a certain power over it. So, like, there's entities. They would be negative. I know that's a very sort of a general term, but for what I do, when I see entities, we want to get them off the person because they have a negative influence. So it could be angels, archangels. It could be any of the saints like Jesus, Abraham.
So if we don't call them entities, what's the proper, I guess, pronoun? How do we go?
Yeah, I just say positive spiritual beings.
Spirit guides. We'll just say that. So connect to your spirit guides as part of that process, and then using that to focus upon the healing of the subject. So that's kind of the nutshell, right?
Well, there's a term for the highest good that you want to consider, because, again, we don't necessarily know a story I tell. This woman years ago she was a friend of my wife's, and some years ago, I was married then, and she hadn't slept through the night in years. Like, she would sleep 20 minutes here or there, and I knew I could get her to sleep, and I said, just come to our house, when you're, at nighttime, you can stay in the spare bedroom and I'll do what I do. So I did what I do. She fell asleep, and I thought she's going to be the happiest person in the world because she slept through the night. When she woke up, she was surprisingly not that happy about it, but she seemed good. But then after that, she was very angry at me. So somehow I interfered with her thing because I assumed she's not sleeping. she should sleep. So it just taught me a lesson, like, be real open to people. There's something in people that knows their path, their destiny, their karma, their spiritual path, their path to healing, whatever that is. And you want to really respect that and activate that inside the person more, so they're sort of choosing the direction. A lot of times,
that's like a whole can of worms there, talking about
yes.
that. I've never even imagined this concept before, that there's the karmic interference with healing a condition. So it's really, and it also makes you think about the nature of certain diseases themselves, or do we call them diseases, or just things that change for a reason in your body or whatnot. Maybe for example, insomnia, because someone is high, the vibration is raising or something. It's, who knows?
Well, sometimes that happens. Sometimes people just, when you're sleeping, they just don't want to connect into that deep place. Like there's certain things in their unconscious that are a little too much for them to handle right then. But sometimes it is, when you do spiritual work, you get so energized, it's kind of hard to sleep. That happens to me sometimes.
So I'm going to turn it over now to the patrons here who have attended to ask questions. Before we do, if you're watching this on YouTube, then please go down, hit that subscribe button, help keep this show going, help keep the channel going, the community. We have the big Facebook group, about 10,000 people in it now, Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics.
Yeah, that's great.
We have the website, we have this YouTube channel. So growing and growing, always can use your guys' support. And if you want to get involved in these classes, be able to participate with guests live and join other weekly classes where we have big discussions, then you can sign up and become a patron, become a subscriber. So let me just pull up real quick the page to be able to do that. So here we are. This is the Patreon page, patreon.com/Afterlife Topics. So patrons at the $30 and up level, you can hang out here in the patron group and participate in these interviews and one-on-one consultations with me and join the inner discussions. Or there's other tiers as well. $3 a month. Anything helps keep the show going, because it's a lot of work doing all this, and I live out of a backpack. So any help in this area is always appreciated. So there is the Patreon page. You can just click on Become a Patron right down there. It's that big orange button. And so that's how you sign up. Pretty easy. And with that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to some of the folks in the chat. So anybody who has any questions for Laurence, go ahead and just jump in there. And I guess first come, first serve.
I do.
Teresa.
Yeah.
Hi, Teresa.
Hello. I was always wondering if, going back to your NDE, I had almost the exact same experience you did, and I always was wondering if it was either an OBE or an NDE, and now I realize that I did have an NDE 10 years ago. So
yeah, people have asked me that, and in one way, one of the people I studied with was a Sufi sheikh, and almost everything I would ask him, he would say, "You don't need to know that." And even to me, it seemed like I was dead and leaving, and that was my experience. But I didn't have I don't know of a doctor saying I flatlined or whatever. So, and I often say it doesn't really matter. Even when I do healing, people say, "How do you know it's not all in their head?" I go, does it really matter if they're better? There's the result. And, so to me, the tremendous love and knowing that there's healing and that just that wisdom that is available that I know. And even now, when I say it, I connect into it more. Sometimes I'm just so caught up in the world, I'm not connecting into that. So someone asked me that and they said, it just sounds like an out-of-body experience. I have out-of-body experiences pretty regularly, and this was not that. As far as
I'm so glad you shared, because that answered what I've been wondering for the past 10 years. I really did have an NDE, and I was pretty sick 10 years ago. I was in the hospital, and my blood pressure dropped to a very dangerous level, and my daughter was 10 years old at the time, 10 or 11, so I knew I had to live for her.
Yeah, I didn't even, it wasn't like I felt like I had to, whoever voice was said, you have to go back, and everything seemed so good. I just said, oh yeah, And I joke around, if I knew what I was going back to, I might have not. So
it was such a beautiful experience for me. The love
yeah,
and peace and joy, just like what you felt. I mean, if I would have died, it would have been okay.
right. That's how I felt too. It was like just
So,
everything was okay, and that
yeah.
loving, talking about it's like people like us. We have a mission to bring that and let the world know about it. The people that didn't have that
I'm
firsthand.
so glad I found Cyrus's group because I can't talk to the people in my regular life because they're very close-minded and some
Yeah.
are very religious, and so.
Well, the world's much more open to it. I was recently watching all the Star Trek series on Netflix,
Oh, I love
and
Star Trek.
they talk about this stuff like, and it's fun. I had a client years ago who she came to me, and she I used to do more things that were not very spiritually oriented, but something happened where I was treating her, and all of a sudden she goes, I feel really weird. I said, weird's good. You're used to being sick. Weird, healthy is going to feel weird. Then she said, I feel really weird. And I could see her skin, she became so pale. She started
Oh,
perspiring. So I stopped treating her, and then she blacked out.
oh my
And
God.
like part of me is like freaking out. Part of me is going, well, I know this is a good thing. And she was sitting, I had to hold her up or she would have fallen over. And then I saw basically this demonic possession leaving her body.
Oh,
And I poured
wow.
some water in her mouth. She came to, and she ran to the bathroom. She threw up. She had diarrhea, and
Oh, that
I
poor
could
thing.
see she looked so much healthier. And I'm wondering, should I tell her what I saw? And I decided to tell her because it just seemed like the right thing. And I'm surprised she even came back after that. And even once I told her, she came back again.
Mm-hmm.
And she basically said to me she was okay with it because of some things she's seen on TV in a sci-fi show.
Uh-huh.
And so she was open to it. And I also know she was so much healthier. That had a lot to do with it. But her husband came in also, and I was trying to explain what I saw. And I said sometimes you just pick stuff up, these negative things, and I included curses from other people. It's rare anyone does it on purpose, but this helps get that negative energy out of you, basically.
That
I
makes
really like what he said, because he said, can we inadvertently pick up blessings from other people? And I thought, wow, that is, that's great. And yes, we can.
yeah, it's awesome.
Well, thank
It's
you.
cool stuff. I'm glad that you can. Yeah, so breathe into your heart there and let that energy like in you there, and let that loving energy, because it's just a thought away all the time. And when well, sometimes, because there's always things trying to block us from that in a certain way.
Oh yeah.
But you breathe into your heart. And so for me, if I visualize the thing I remember in my near-death experience, I connect to that loving. Even now, I almost feel like crying, like something just opens
Oh,
up.
I
Like,
know.
yeah, it's kind of cool.
Thank you, Teresa. And
Thank
yeah,
you.
well, I think Star Trek: The Next Generation had so many spiritual concepts.
Amazing,
Oh,
yeah.
I
But once
know.
we go into
Love
the remakes with the J.J. Abrams films, they took everything meaningful and then
It's kind of dark.
they just sucked it out and replaced it with like an action film. Anyway, does anybody else have a question for Laurence? The line is open.
I have a question. I just heard that you said that you have out-of-body experience regularly.
Say that again?
That you have out-of-body experience regularly?
Yes. Yes.
So can you just talk about that, where you go when you have out-of-body experience?
Yeah, so it's the type of meditation I do is sort of designed to do that. And you hear this sound and it sort of pulls you out of your body. And the idea is to go into what's called the soul realm. And in there, it's very similar to what I experienced in my near-death experience. It just is very loving. It's kind of open to almost being what you want, and as opposed to like on the astral level, there's like things there that are very similar to this. So the physical level, and then you just get this, sometimes it's just like a purplish color, and it just, normally I do that, and then I'll start to see images in my mind that I'm assuming are past lives that are clearing up. Then when that's over, this energy comes when I come back into my body, there's a lot of energy. It's very tingly. Sometimes it hurts. Like any sores in my body, sometimes the energy is trying to push them out, and it sometimes it hurts. It's so intense. When it's on a really good day, it just feels like this great tingling energy moving through my body. So
That's really cool that you mentioned, the soul level versus the astral level.
yeah,
There are two different places people can go to in the out of body work. And, what we call a soul level could also be like some people call it like a causal level, but it is the mental kind of connection to God type of state of existence where connected to the source consciousness, if you want to call
yeah,
it that.
yeah.
But then, then by contrast, actually, I mean, anybody, we can go into that period. It's almost like a timeout zone before we go back into to the world that we know, whether it's this world or the astral world, which has just as many complications and duality and drama and upheaval and adventure as this world.
Right.
So
It's
no matter what
it can be
realm
cool.
you're in, anybody.
And what I know is it's the astral, causal, mental, etheric, and then the soul level. So, but there's so many different levels, and even us talking about them, it's kind of hard. So one of the people I worked with would always say, that I study with, he works on the etheric level, and but then above that is the soul, which even when I just start to say it, this energy comes in, it just feels this nice feeling in my body. And I know that's what really helps people heal in a clear way. Like you said, in the astral, there's all sorts of things. Some of them are very nice, but there can be kind of spooky things too.
There can be spooky things. It can also be great. I mean, the astral is kind of where we continue our lifestyle as we had here. So there's many opportunities that come with that. So everything has a place. So it's not like one is better than the other one. And I think that's a mistake a lot of people in esoteric communities make, and say, well, the soul level is better than the astral level, so we should just go there for our existence. But actually, everything has a purpose.
Right. Well, everything has a purpose. And
that's like a big theme of like my books. If anybody out there who has bought like The Afterlife and Beyond or Understanding Life After Death, that's one of my big points. Anyway, so we're still going here for a few more minutes, so the line is open. Does anybody else have any questions for Laurence? I thought I heard somebody say something.
Yeah, I did, but then my daughter came in, so hold on. I'm sorry. I'll ask it now.
Okay, while we wait for Keely, anybody else?
Well, I'll just say so. You mentioned I have a daughter, and part of that is, I think, when you were asking about what to do, I do think being of service in the world is a really important part of opening up spiritually. So, I work, do stuff at her school, I go to a Unity church and do stuff, be of service to people. I think that's really very important.
Yeah, I think that's also my advice. Even if, no matter what the situation, even if you're grieving, you lost somebody you love. I mean, even doing the service will, help realign you again to.
Yes, definitely.
Keely, are you back?
Yeah, I am. Sorry. So I missed the first few minutes. So I had one question. I heard your story about seeing your grandpa before your near-death experience, but did the healing start after your near-death experience?
I guess looking back, I could see there were little inklings of it.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, a lot of stuff I learned from playing basketball and just connecting with people and really I had this experience. I was around 10 years old where I was playing basketball and it was almost halftime. And instead of trying to make another basket, I started dribbling towards my bench. So near half court, so it was far away in the corner, I just took one hand with the ball and threw it over my head. And I knew as soon as I let go of the ball, it was going to go in. I didn't even turn around and look, and everyone stood up and cheered because it went in swish. And it was like that connecting, so that something I really connected to things before that. It just, when I saw what I saw in my near-death experience, it just like, oh, that's it. That's the thing that it was. I just didn't really know it. So.
Yeah.
And healing when I was young, I was like, are you kidding me? If someone even said this to me, it'd be like, that's ridiculous. So.
That's really cool. I'm sorry, go on, Keely.
No, that's what I was saying. It's really neat, and I think that I mean, I've had experiences where, where you were saying you didn't question seeing your grandpa, things that have happened, or I've seen or heard things, and I never questioned it when I was, a teenager. And then you kind of look back and you think, well, that was weird that I didn't think twice about that, or I mean,
It seems
it's
kind of
kind of
naive,
odd.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was just going to say those videos that you have on healing, I would love to see them. So
Okay. Yeah. My YouTube channel is Dr. Lawrence Brock. So
okay.
there's a lot of them on there. There's meditations. There's some self-care techniques.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I mean, there a lot of them are really good, and the ones I put on there, I only put when I feel a lot of energy coming in. So
Yeah.
try to keep the good ones on there. So.
I'll put the links on the YouTube once the YouTube is up as well. So you can also, if I don't have any of the links, and send them to me, Lawrence, and then I'll put them up on the channel on the YouTube.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that would be fun. Thank you. Thank you.
It's really interesting. You can connect on that level, like by entering flow state by playing basketball. Like you better believe Michael Jordan, would enter into a flow state, and that's how he'd be so successful.
Something, yeah. I mean, he was like that was magical. Something about Michael Jordan that sort of I didn't know this at the time, but he really motivates people by being really tough on them. When I see someone who connects to. I mean, it's amazing what he would do. I would just think he'd be all loving and, lovey-dovey, but he's very tough. So.
That's funny. I didn't even know that, but interesting. That's definitely a different, different subject, I think.
Well, I've learned there's also sometimes being loving is being tough. I have kids.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, there's a balance between what's his name, Gordon Ramsay, and being, and I don't know, and Mr. Rogers. I mean,
right, yeah.
You don't want to, definitely in life, you have to sometimes, to certain people, they really respond to being tough. Yeah. Anyway, that's a different whole subject. I think we're just about time to wrap up here. Okay. Yeah, I guess we better call it a night. Sorry if I didn't get to you in time, or if you had a question, but the line was open, but now we're just about time to wrap up. Usually about an hour, 10 minutes, we finish these things.
Okay.
So, Laurence, do you have any last things you want to share about what you're up to? Any projects? Anything you want to tell the community here at Afterlife Topics?
Yeah, I guess somewhat where I live in New Jersey, there's a store called Earth Spirit, and the guy approached me saying, do you want to do something for Halloween? And for some reason, I really thought that was exciting, like introduce people to the afterlife stuff. And I realized I just, I want to make sure it's staying on a positive path, even though it would talk some about the things I clear, like the demons and entities and stuff like that. And it just seemed kind of an exciting, fun thing to do. And, always trying to get new people involved in this. And I do think the loving is everyone's nature. And that's the thing that drives us. And whatever anyone is doing, they're looking for love, and they're looking for that connection to the spirit, even if they're not aware of it. So
yeah, you can use something like Halloween, even if it's kind of silly, as a way to get the foot in the door to introduce certain subjects.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's pretty neat. I hope you talk about something spooky, but then actually talk about. And then some people, they really open up, like they're just thirsty to learn about some of the afterlife.
Well, so something in me got excited about it, and something in my head said, "Oh, you shouldn't do that." So it's a good little lesson in there to be trusting. Trusting yourself. That part that gets excited is moving you in the right direction.
That's really good advice. A good way to leave. Real quick, your website again. That's at LaurenceBrock.com.
LaurenceBrock.com. LAURENCE BROCK.
Okay. Perfect. Okay, and that's a really great kind of message to leave things off of. Is that when you feel energized, something is moving you in the right direction. There's no reason to have to always second guess that. So think about what things make you feel energized. I'll tell you, I feel energized by getting out of this than grim closet I'm in. Because if you notice, I'm sweating like a
I see, yeah.
I look like I must be like 4 days sick with a fever. So I apologize.
That's commitment and dedication.
I'm in Budapest. I'm in a hostel. Everyone is connecting by partying all over the place, which is good for them, but it's noisy outside, so I have to lock myself in here. So anyway, so I'm going to bounce out of here, pack up, because I'm on the way to Poland.
Thank you everyone for coming.
Thanks,
Thank you. Thank you for coming, Doctor.
Thanks, everybody, for participating. And again, you can join us at the Patreon page. You can come by the Facebook group, Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics. Thanks for watching this channel, and we'll see you guys next time. We have some more guests coming up, including a very interesting guy related to ITC phenomenon, as well as developing physical medium. So there's other crazy guests coming up around the corner. So stay tuned to that. Okay, see you guys.